Well, good morning, sisters and brothers in Mennonite Church, Eastern Canada. My name's Steve Heinrichs. I'm the Indigenous-Settler Relations Director for our nationwide church. For those of you who might not be familiar with the Indigenous-Settler Relations Ministry, there are three things that we're trying to do: nurture courageous conversations, mobilize communities for justice, and stoke life-giving relationships. First, we want to cultivate courageous dialogue in our communities, honest dialogue that privileges the priorities that Indigenous peoples are naming. The most marginalized peoples across these lands, some call Canada, are Indigenous peoples. So we want to do what the gospel invites and seriously attend to the cries of the suffering. Oscar Romero once said, "The poor tell us what the mission of the church is." Second, we want to organize for justice, to find ways to embody a peacemaking ministry of reconciliation through creative witness and collective action, so that we can, as some theologians put it, help take down the crucified from their cross. We need to speak and act against the injustices that are being committed against Indigenous peoples. And finally, we want to support and champion transformative relationships. We want to come alongside Mennonite congregations and regional churches as you all seek to develop life-giving mutual friendships with Indigenous communities and nations where you all live, praying for and resourcing those efforts. So what does this look like on the ground? Let me share a few of the things that we're up to right now. In May, we're going to launch a new book project that'll help us explore the Bible in the context of settler colonialism. It's called Unsettling the Word: Biblical Experiments in Decolonization. As many of you know, the Bible is an amazing, life-giving set of traditions, but for generations here in Canada and elsewhere, the Bible has also been a tool of oppression, used by church and state to dispossess Indigenous peoples of their lands, cultures, and spiritualities. Given this devastating legacy, many want nothing to do with it. But is it possible for us to reclaim the Bible from the dominant powers and their abuses? Can we make it an instrument for justice in the cause of the oppressed, even a nonviolent weapon for decolonization? In Unsettling the Word, we brought together over 60 Indigenous and settler authors from around the world to wrestle with the scriptures, rereading and reimagining that ancient text for the sake of healing and reparative futures. 6 of those authors come from the MCEC community, so way to go. I think it's an amazing project, and if you're interested, Common Word is the place where you can pick up a copy. So what about concrete justice initiatives? Well, tomorrow, and at the time of doing this video, tomorrow I'm going to be hopping on a train, making my way to the West Coast, responding to an invitation from Indigenous spiritual leaders to pray with them and fellow clergy and other peoples of faith on Burnaby Mountain. You've probably heard, Burnaby is where grassroots coalitions led by host nations are seeking to protect the land, waters, and the well-being of future generations from the attempted twinning of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. The project aims to increase the flow of oil from 300,000 to 890,000 barrels a day, but it doesn't have the consent of local Indigenous peoples, and it's in violation of the spirit and intent of the climate commitments that Canada has made in the Paris Agreement. Mennonite Church Canada has publicly resolved on a number of occasions to both respect Indigenous rights and to care for creation. So what might the Spirit be saying to our church in this time of ecological crisis? In this time where the powers and principalities are still seeking to grow the fossil fuel industry, when we need to radically embrace simplicity and sufficiency. I'm going to Burnaby to pray with other faith leaders in that sacred and contested space to learn more and to discern next steps for the church. I'm also going to act with these other leaders as we seek to enter into these conversations in more costly fashion. And our hope is to hear from God and each other how we might mobilize our communities in deeper and more faithful ways into this critical collective work. Finally, what about friendships? Well, in the beginning of June, Indigenous-Settler Relations is bringing together 24 sisters and brothers from our nationwide church to Nova Scotia to participate in an Indigenous evangelical theological gathering called NAPES. Together, we're going to explore difficult topics, but important ones like white supremacy and racial conflict, grappling with the ways in which the church can theologize and live better for the sake of right relationships. 8 of our participants are amazing folks from MCEC, so please pray for them. Pray that they make rich connections with different peoples from different communities and have opportunities to share their learnings back in their home congregations. Friends, all across Mennonite Church Canada, there are significant circles that are seeking to practice peace and justice with host peoples, and it's happening right there in MCEC too. In fact, at lunch, you'll all have an opportunity to participate in a conversation around the creation of a local Indigenous-Settler Relations group for MCEC with my awesome friend Josie Winterfeld. What is the Spirit of Jesus stirring in your regional church? How are you being called to action by the crucified ones, the Indigenous peoples? And what are the specific gifts that MCEC brings to the work of reconciliation? Blessings, MCEC, in your great work. And thank you so much for allowing me to serve you in this capacity. I'm so humbled and honored to do it. Love and courage to you all.